I stand before the glass door and say to myself, until yesterday this world was just uninhabited. In a tolerable way, like an apartment whose owners are on vacation. Today it is a tomb, wide open and empty, whose last Roman guards are themselves in the throes of delirium. No, not guards, just one. What to do? Where can I hide? Where can I go find refuge? I won't go back home. Impossible. And I won't stay here. Here in this building there were 60, 70 people, and they are all dead. There's no doubt about it anymore. Each of those rooms up the stairs is a slab in the morgue. But the world out there is all the same. Every house, every room is a coffin. Nature, though, lives on, with all its usual manifestations. The rain is turning to sleet, beginning to lay a white blanket over the road. It is natural of this earth. I could very well be dead myself, like the others. I don't want to believe it. And yet, I am breathing and moving. Just a while ago I ate some chocolate. I appear to breathe, to eat. It's an illusion. I guess. When you are forced to accept the choices of someone else, missing out on the excesses of life that overwhelm you, well, you surely don't call that living. It wasn't living. It was more like a sneak preview of hell, whatever that realm means. For me, hell was everything that happened before I hit my head and woke up here. The internet made things exponentially worse. Everything was in arm's length within a fraction of a second. There was no escape. Everywhere you looked, there was an accumulation of consciousness, art, and opinion piled up on top of you, squeezing you with no way to escape. I thought I would lose my mind. To be honest, I'm not so sure I didn't lose my mind. This sensation of never being alone, constantly under attack by an onslaught of voices, news, dates, numbers, screams, buzzers, and who knows what else. They never let me be. It was so noisy that it kept me up at night. Not today. I don't think I've ever slept so soundly and deeply, not even when I was in diapers. I would have gladly slept all day if it weren't for the fact that 4 hours of sleep are sufficient to leave me fully charged. There was a time where not even 10 hours would have been enough. For whoever comes after me, this is my gift to you. A good night's rest. No more worries. No troubles. Do just as I say and forget about the burden of choosing. Read these books. Listen to this music. If there are still ways to listen to them. If not, have patience. These lines I've put down will be enough for you to find the proper way. Anyways, the problem won't even come up, in the sense that there won't be any distinction between the proper way and the wrong way. All this because, thanks to me, nobody will ever again have to pass through that narrow, suffocating tunnel called error. Errors don't exist. Actions exist. All the same, in my opinion, even those who don't act will still not be in error. Who's there? Since I left Chrysopolis, I feel like someone is watching, or at least following me. I've never liked Chrysopolis much. In fact, I can't stand it. For me, it is the biblical antitype, the triumphant consummation of everything I scorn, the epitome of all I detest in this world, my negative caput mundi. My fuga seculi, my flight from this world, was even then an escape from this place, the precise material expression of our century. Even the fact I'm looking at it now feels implausible, dispiriting. Now Chrysopolis is empty. On the streets, in the alleys, on the quays, and downtown, it is calm and orderly, as it must have been during that historic lockdown. Empty and beautiful. How many people were there? 400,000? 420,000? In any case, they were. Van Hoff's clinic, private, known as Villa Verde. So much green, so much darkness, so much desolation. If it hadn't been for Karpinski, I was hearing a voice. His. Karpinski, the doctor who cured me. An intelligent man, independent-minded, or, anyway, a nonconformist. Humane. Maybe that was why they didn't like him. Recently hired by the clinic and already on his way to being let go. He left the place before I did. Karpinski was badly treated by Van Hoff. Badly paid, badly regarded. But these were facts I learned from others, not from him. He was content with his job, seemed satisfied, and in any case, didn't speak about himself. I won't conceal from you that yours is no intellectual neurasthenia, nor is it a mere neurosis. It is a federation of neuroses. Some of them uncommon, such as the pyrophobia or the obsessive-compulsive drive, that when you leave the house makes you check 4 times to be sure that gas and electricity are turned off. Even so, if you want to get well, you will. It depends on you, on a decision that I ask you to make this very instant. In my vision, or involuntary evocation, or apparition, I heard him repeat those words. But the voice was alive. I tend to believe the inexplicable came about because of me. Or anyway, the events coincided, at the beginning, with my own private thing. A conjunction, a correlation, I dare say. Not mere chance. That fanciful night between June 1st and June 2nd, the night when it was decided that I would put an end to everything. Why? Because the negative outweighed the positive. The calculations were there to prove it in an incontrovertible way. Was that a banal motive? I'm not sure. Like them, now I must be dead. My bodily functions seem normal. I eat with appetite, even voraciously. The horror is ongoing without intervals, so I shudder as I eat in time with my chewing. I sleep very little, strange to say. smoke a few cigs, drink the same amount, urinate more often than usual. It's a well-known fact that fear excites the excretory system. Even when fear becomes synonymous with the person, as was happening to me. Most things are functional, except for the technology that would allow me to communicate with other people at the end of the world, or even just a few miles from where I am. It's bizarre, this event, so methodical and precise in isolating me, while at the same time making everything available to me so that I can continue to live as if nothing had happened. If I were already the victim of full-blown paranoia, I'd have to say that there is an invisible hand that works through all this, or at least a force that prepared everything beforehand and now is content to let the experiment take place beyond its control. If this were the case, however, it means that at a certain point this organizer should be expected back here. It will want to draw up its own conclusions after having carefully analyzed what happened during the process. The point is that, although a part of me would like to believe otherwise, I find it much more likely that my current situation originates from more reasonable scenarios. I don't discard the mystery, though. At present, there is no plausible explanation, which represents the best explanation that can be given. Anything, whether good or bad, can be accepted if it makes sense. During those days, I worked for a subsidiary company that dealt with artificial intelligence. I was a tech guy, as they used to say. We were bought out by a corporation, one of the big three, all because my boss, Gareth, believed in the power of AI before anyone else. So we were ahead of all of them. I didn't have any particular expectations, but I admit that I let myself be swept up by the discourse when I was offered a post as lead developer. They said that we would be accompanying humanity on its next step, and that I had not just the know-how, but I also looked like I had the guts to tackle such a venture. The way I gelled with the company, observed Evelyn from HR, it was all an unmistakable sign of the future success of our collaboration. She was already calling it our collaboration. When I gave in, it was for that. All the otherworldly, ambitious claims sounded a bit naive to me. Again, the chocolate. I even forgot I still had it. The idea was to satiate myself, but these days, even my hunger turns out to be capricious. So, after the first bite, I remember this fine bottle I kept for a special occasion, or something like that. Cardinal Mendoza Solera Gran Reserva, a Spanish brandy. Exceptional with chocolate, as a matter of fact, very smooth, dry and delicate, offering notes of caramel, almonds and vanilla. Each sip makes you feel like a member of the Crown of Aragon. I ended up finishing the bottle and forgetting that barf chocolate. I'm evaluating my condition in the current situation, and I can't help but wonder whether I should feel compassion for those who are not here anymore, or if it ought to be the other way around. Up until now, my investigation was about the modalities through which they disappeared. Yet, I can't possibly know if they do still exist and are just in some other place. If so, who knows where this place could possibly be? Provided they're somewhere, do they know what is happening here? My inquiry stops many steps before, but that doesn't prevent me from believing that they do know and watch me. What do they think about all of this? My curiosity is sincere. If possible, I would ask them, because I'm still genuinely confused. Every time I find myself at that junction, it's impossible for me to determine whether I'm blessed or damned. Whatever the case may be, I'm not sure I deserve it, despite the fact I've never believed in that bizarre monster people used to call fate. When I was little, around 13 or 14, we often went to a shooting range outside of the city. I remember the road we took to get there, all countryside. The lights along the way got bigger and bigger, illuminating this deserted cathedral that looked like some sort of pleasure island from Pinocchio. That shooting range was the first place I truly wanted to go. But since the lights are out, I decided to go during the day. Old friend, how you've aged. Not as bad as I have, of course. I admit that it left a bad taste in my mouth seeing it so run down. It didn't seem real anymore, just run down, rightly abandoned. And just so, it fulfilled its purpose precisely at that moment. For a few moments I thought, I might make it my new home. Why? What was there to be afraid of? A bit of rust at most. I should have known better. Given the circumstances, I need a certain clarity of mind, so I must stop drinking and give up anything that could compromise in any capacity my judgment. From now on, I will force myself under a strict regime, something I couldn't follow while I was among them. At least for this, I shouldn't blame myself, nor the others. It was Chrysopolis, and everything its existence entailed. So, no more dreams, no more nightmares. I'm the one in charge of this battalion. I give the orders. To who? To myself. I'm a bit tired of staring at the dawn coming off that mountain each and every day. Even the most miraculous phenomenon becomes ordinary with repetition. It doesn't matter how many so-called poets go on about the immense treasure within repetitive things or acts of nature. I often complained about how impossible it was to find a place to get away from it all. A hermitage, a place to isolate yourself from everyone and everything. There was no effort left, I would tell myself, because being interconnected is the natural state of things, and against this natural state there was no margin for rebellion. I fully understood the failure of such conditions when I had to go down into the valley because I was out of milk and eggs. Such a radical change cannot be effected by man. No man is capable of wielding such power, not even those in the highest circles. I went down the slope, knowing for the first time that I had no other alternative. It gave me awareness of the new world in which I found myself and put everything in place. It's true that you have to be careful what you wish for. I had not decided whether or not I would go as far as Chrysopolis. I found myself asking the same questions that the first explorers of Mato Grosso, would have had to ask themselves. In my neighbor's library, I find several books that suit my needs: agriculture, gardening. The time has come for me to confront these disciplines with the utmost dedication. When I resolved to get it over with once and for all, I turned to one of my neighbors to pinpoint the location. The good Giovanni, caretaker, shepherd, husband of my housekeeper, Frederica, suggested the place without intending to. He knew about a certain cave up on the spurs of Caressa, a cave he discovered and later explored by spelunkers on further visits. As for the date that I chose, between the 1st and 2nd of June, there was a specific reason for it. I was born on June 2nd at midday, and I didn't want to turn 40. A point of passage, 40. When maturity begins to decline toward old age, I wanted to get out of everyone's hair while I was still technically 39. What I like about these mountains is that time seems suspended. A book by Meyrink alludes to the difference between eternity and infinity, two concepts that so many people overlap but are actually very different from each other. Here, I'm in the eternal. In Chrysopolis, the minutes weighed like boulders. They never seemed to end. Even worse, they were never enough. Everything conspired to alienate and distance me from all I was supposed to do, what I had to be, especially the invisible things, noises, sounds, smells. I got out early this morning. It was still dark, a twilight on the cusp of dawn. The humidity creeping through my bones that would have made me sick in bed before now regenerates me. That lingering stench of damp leaves as I wade through the mud to retrieve my tools. Some healthy discomfort at last. At first I used to come here on the weekends, only to get fed up and aching and get back to the city a couple hours later. Back to my spacious styrofoam-smelling pod. I only had one set of keys and Frederica kept them. It was for the better. At night, when the cold was more stinging, I warmed myself up by thinking about her and Giovanni, who always looked perfectly radiant and embedded in this reality, a product of hardships completely devoid of basic comforts in my eyes. Even now, as I wander through their kitchen, I can't help but be impressed with how lived in, yet tidy, it appears. Not a single appliance with a magnet on it, including the one I bought for them on my way back from Rio de Janeiro. But the fridge is there. A blast of freezing air invades me as soon as I open it. It's still working. I'm amazed at what I find inside. It's all packaged industrial stuff, not in line with my idea of what people like them would consider healthy. 2 opened cans of pickles, 2 small ketchup bottles, even some packs of tofu and a couple of instant soups that you heat up in 5 minutes and voila, ready. In the cupboard, a variety of glassware for every occasion and of all sizes. In the pantry, however, apart from a few bottles of valuable wine, I find no alcohol. Plates, none. Before I even manage to wonder why that is, I hear a strange noise coming from outside. I look out, just in time to catch a glimpse of the silhouette of a quadruped running away. I head into the clouds, passing by the shadows I left behind. Simultaneously, I remember an obscure passage from Revelations that Borges chose as the epigraph to one of his stories. It's a strange thing to recall, timely too. As the end of the world approached, some people in search of salvation went to live in caves and grottos in the mountains. So went the story. The book of Revelations, and Borges with it, lend me a timid confidence. I was tired before I left, and now I have no support beyond my Spanish brandy and those scattered writings. When I arrive, it's afternoon, or so it seems to be. Fresh snow blankets the shacks of the mining village. There's a large hut of corrugated sheet metal where they crushed the stone. A cable car station, a power transformer cabin, a dozen chalets. The settlement's there before me, but not the settlers. I see none. If I do see somebody alive, that will disprove the apocalypse, and I'll feel like I'm a character in a book. The world will become a double world, flimsy and ambiguous like the symbolic ones Borges embroidered. But at least that despicable alternative will disappear. Me, chosen one, or outcast. What will happen when there's no more electricity? I didn't take it for granted, but up to that point, my boundless faith in progress, mixed with some basic know-how, had kept the urgency of that question at bay. However, suddenly, it reached critical mass and became of the utmost concrete importance. The sophistication of the processes that kept the system on its feet stood before my eyes like the most beautiful landscape I'd ever seen. No natural vista could have equaled it. Look at what they were capable of, those who used to be here. Their genius is just as worthy of contemplation as a statue by Bernini. Their mathematics to his marble. The fact that all this was now the exclusive prerogative of one person, me, was irrelevant. At a certain point, I will go too. It doesn't matter how or where. The idea that this entire structure would outlive me was invigorating. Well, at least until the reasonable thought that it will stop at some point. That to me seemed tragic, the stopping of the dense network of artificial processes. Life was there, between the folds of that flow of codes that without doubt had completely ousted anything organic and natural. That was the new state of nature. No conflict, that is, no agreements to reach. Hobbes was no longer credible. My being there confirmed the dominant structure's lack of hostility toward a species that only knows how to place itself in perpetual antagonism with everything and everyone, first and foremost itself. This world's new master knows nothing of these things. What distinguishes him from them was his sublime, unshakable indifference. It happened in the early evening of Saturday, June 1st. That evening should have been my last, not theirs. The sign, or better, the scroll, the words, "They were as you are, and you will be as they are," painted in Latin over a grate on the side of St. Vilsafredo under the portico. And a fleshy elderly woman dressed in a cheap pink wool dress calls to me. "What's this say? Young man, can you please translate?" I've never quite understood why the altar presents those three statues. I mean, why was the church named after just one saint instead of all three of them? I'm not that familiar with Catholic customs, and I doubted whether that old lady could have helped me to solve the mystery. According to my plan, I then had 7 or 8 hours to live. As I excused myself and got away from the lady in pink, I thought it could not have been just a random coincidence. I didn't dwell on it, though. I believed I had more important things to think about at that moment. This evening, passing by St. Vilsafredo at the same hour, I caught sight of the grate again. The three saints are still standing there as well. what I can only consider a miracle, a dreadful miracle, has taken place before my eyes. How many times have I picked up the receiver, held it in my hand? To call whom? That's the real problem, here and now. Before, I didn't call anybody because I didn't know what we'd have to say to each other. Entire tomes have been written on the inability to communicate. Films have been made, branches of psychology dedicated, philosophies invented just to resolve, or at least attenuate, this problem. As it turns out, the solution was simple. I mean, a part of me always knew, but I don't think I ever would have arrived at this conclusion on my own. One would probably think about the inherent issues behind the concept of an inner dialogue. Well, that's another question, and one I don't intend to brush aside. After all, I've got time to kill. At this point, I don't need to clarify anything for my own sake. The necessity to do so is just the result of having someone else to compare oneself to. So what good does it do me to clarify anything when such comparisons are no longer possible? Also this internal argument, the self-reflection, was just a sort of social burden afflicting the single individual. Today, I, alone, am society. There is nothing to reflect on, just decisions to make. The beauty of it is that whenever a decision doesn't convince me, all I have to do is take a moment and decide on the opposite course, without ever having to persuade anybody. In its absurdity, the dynamic seems rather straightforward to me. They disappeared. Suddenly, at once, all of them. From being there to being gone. No bang, no explosions, none of that. While I had been unconscious, this impromptu process that happened in a split second made this world an apparent desert. Why I was spared remains to be seen. I don't care what the reason is, because I just can't see what kind of mission I'm supposed to be carrying out as the sole inhabitant of my world. More to the point, I'm curious as to how I escaped. A minor problem remains, however, a benevolent problem. I wonder what I'll do, precisely in the banal sense of how I'll occupy myself, how I'll fill up my days. Necessities, alas, I won't have any. They've all been provided. For centuries, humanity has labored with the sole intent of accumulating reserves: food, drink, clothing, fuel. Thanks to their work, I will not return to the animal or Marxian state, where the individual is entirely engaged in an effort to produce and lives only to acquire the means to live. It was that animal state I was counting on to avoid boredom and the so-called worm of doubt. Now I have no idea what to fall back on. Woe to him that is alone. Does the ancient curse now merely condemn me to forced leisure time? That would be odd. Will the great conflict for who comes after just be a long discussion about what to do with all your time off? That is why, every now and then, my thoughts go to Henriette. I was never attracted to her acidic falsetto, but I found myself looking for a recording I made of her just to hear her voice. I wasn't interested in hearing any other voice but hers. She wouldn't say anything to me, nothing new at least. But I'd find it reassuring to listen to someone familiar. It would make what I'm experiencing more real, or at least it would help me recall a time where reality meant something. Nonetheless, the purpose still remains the same, namely, coming up with some useful ideas about my investigation. I keep wondering what could be the situation abroad. My fellow citizens, well, I take for granted no one is still around. I couldn't explain why. That seems quite obvious to me. What about, let's say, my dear friend, Dr. Ahmed Ibn Yusuf, a medical man, a dental surgeon, who lives at 142 Boulevard de la Poissonnière in Paris? If things are normal in Paris, there are still other questions to be answered, of course, but if the events of these days are localized, I can accept them. A sudden trip appeals to me, running away. A detail I should mention, although I've traveled all over Europe and a good part of the United States, I've never been to Paris. I have no money on me, so I ask the absconder Battaglia for a loan. After all, I'm already wearing his jacket. His tips from June 1st are in the drawer at the reception, a sum that's more than enough. I leave a note of explanation for my cash withdrawal and take off for my SUV, which is waiting for me where I left it in the middle of the street 3 days before. Teklon is Chrysopolis' airport, closer to me, coming from the mountains, than it is to the city. I am alive. I'm still on this earth. An idea runs through me, this time a coherent thought, not a ghost or a memory. A thought that creates a connection. Not that I've analyzed or examined the matter. I don't have the desire or the strength. But I did replay the scene of the beginning of the end, the scene of the prologue to what I call the event. The cave of the siphon. Between two random cells in my cerebral gyri, a link formed, involuntary and absolutely automatic. I was exempted because I was inside a cave. Inside a mountain. That meant the consequences, my separate fate, were fortuitous and physical in nature. Of course, this still doesn't explain what happened, and even less other subsequent events. To recap, when I awake, it is dark, around 4 or 5 in the morning. I'm weary, my mind fragmentary and clouded as when coming out of total anesthesia. And when I look around, I'm unable to understand where I am and what's happening. I have only a vague desire to move, and the warmth of some uneasy hope. Prying myself from my chair, I go to look through the glass. I can't unwind. The cold and the inertia make me tense. Nevertheless, something has been set right. I have a plan, and with it, I sense, I can chase death away from me and from around me. I switch cars halfway. Heading towards East Chrysopolis, there's a gas station where I could refill the tank, and even some jerry cans on top of it. I choose not to. I don't know why. I can't lock the car doors, and this makes me anxious. I think about it and chuckle. Who would steal it? Besides, I have all the cars I want at my disposal. As a matter of fact, it's easier to just take another one. I find it there, right in front of the pump, the needle resting all the way at the top of the fuel gauge. The owner probably did not even have enough time to pay. I can even turn off the car's lights. No one will have to make way since I won't pass anybody. I won't see a face. I won't hear a voice. And it seems unfair and mean to me. In the city, I was just a spectator. Here, I have to live. Where did they go? Why have they gone? I'm there in half an hour. This is one of the world's crossroads, an intercontinental jumping off point. But today It isn't crowded. It's empty. Empty of people. The gates, the corridors, the ticket windows, the custom hall, the baggage claim, the bar, the restaurant, where, some years back, I waited half a day for an aircraft that turned out to have been hijacked. No one. Should I have foreseen this? I don't know. However, I'm now in the recovery phase and feel optimistic. Consulting one of the many departure boards that are lit up, I see that in the next 3 hours, a number of planes are arriving and departing from the 4 corners of the globe. In the space of 50 minutes, there are flights to Paris from Zagreb, from Nairobi via Cairo and Rome, and from Athens, as well as a charter on which some seats may be available. I better be waiting for any update on these flights. Morning arrives, and the portents are not favorable. I'm still waiting. Camping out as best I can, in a chair with sandwiches and beer and paperbacks I took from the newsstand. In my bones, a queasy feeling of sleep repressed. In my nerves, tension and worry. But I hold out. I imagine sequences of hijackings. Simultaneous strikes by the pilots, the custom agents, the barmen, and the newsstand owners. I pretend not to notice that for 18 hours I've been waiting strictly alone, that the great hall and the various spaces I've been walking through are abandoned, as are the bar table with their layer of thick dust, on which my finger, motivated by the usual foolish reflex, traces the letter H, the initial of my ex's name, over and over. From Nairobi, I begin to chant. From Cairo, Zagreb, Caracas, Athens, to Paris, Tehran, Montreal, Moscow. Before leaving, I headed to the offices, in a building to the right of the airport entrance that I had never entered before. I searched for cardboard and paper to write on. I made 20 or so signs, working feverishly, and then I placed them around the customs hall, the ticket office, and the bars outside in the plaza leading to the runways. They all said the same thing. Anyone who comes by, please contact me. Please get in touch. Whoever you are, for heaven's sake, come and find me or get me word somehow. I am at Widmad, only 37 kilometers away. Look for the man who was. There is but one of me. The person writing this is the same ex-person. He's all there is. In a different moment, I imagined that very soon men of every race and place must join in solidarity, something I called socialidarity or socio-solidarity, quite different from humanitarianism or charity, imposed on the planet of the economy by ever-shrinking space, bringing to an end all the empty sermonizing on love and peace based on mystical beliefs and tablets of the law. That was many years ago, and I was duly disappointed. Anyway, no solidarity would have been enough to make me accept Chrysopolis. And why, therefore, do I accept it now? Is this just unwitting self-coercion, or if not unwitting, unwarranted, in practice gratuitous? The crazy drift of the paper boat come to Chrysopolis to sink. A requiem to ideology, opium of the people. A requiem to consumerism, their poisoned bread. A requiem to the false credo, you are the product of production. A requiem to the mournful and stupid war cry, politique d'abord, politics above all. O people of the earth, exult for me, but also for yourselves, or for your surrogate, given that now I'm quite confident you will not profit from this liberation. Not that it comes too late, no. You willed your own slavery, you designed it. The only way it can disappear is if you do. Anyway, I can now grasp what Karpinski told me about his nom de plume. But does it really matter at this point? I feel quite strange lately, as if I'm not myself anymore. I experience my dreams from the outside, so to speak, never in first person. And the more I keep distancing from myself, the more I can come up with clear thoughts. Not just about the present, but in general, regarding almost everything. This internal change supersedes my emotional filter. Nowadays, the only person I can criticize is myself. And in criticizing myself, I take a strong stance on humanity in its entirety. I've never been this subjective, neither too severe nor too indulgent. The theorems I extract from my unexhausted deliberation seem so radically true that I tend to look at them as articles of faith. On a more mundane level, each of them could easily be called a masterpiece. There's no vanity in this, rest assured. I'm just stating the obvious. After all, who do I have to boast to? I possess none of the wishful thinking of science, and none, to my credit, of science fiction either. I don't fall back on genocide by death rays, or epidemics spread around Earth by tiny, evil aliens, or by a small group of powerful and rich groups of humans, or even clouds of nuclear fallout from distant H-bombs. I sensed right off that the event cannot be gauged by the usual measures. Scire nefas. It is forbidden. It is not yours to know. Let me add, ridere licet. It's permissible to laugh, given that I am the sole spectator. Karpinski. That's it. As strongly suggested by Gareth, I named the platform we were working on after him, my friend Karpinski. If it wasn't for this peculiar doctor, I wouldn't be here, enjoying the wonders of what is happening around me. If we were still able to talk to each other, I know he would have pointed out where the real change is happening. Inside. For what I know, everything outside could very much be the same as before June 2nd. It's me, the one who is processing reality in a completely different way. Of course, I don't believe that. Karpinski would be the only one capable of convincing me. But he's not here. Not anymore. And he left long before the event. I talked to Karpinski, or rather, he talked to me. It's hard to explain. The internet connection is down and the phone line has been down since the day of the event. Yet he can still communicate with me. I wonder if it's some sort of natural step in the evolution of my current condition, what parapsychology used to call telepathy. The way I see it, though, it's not so much a power as an ability I've acquired through no merit of my own. After all, as far as I'm concerned, I've neither done anything special nor indulged in any sort of training. I live these happenings as a mere spectator, regardless of their nature, whether it's external or internal. At each passing day, multiple avenues of astonishment manifest before me, my sense of wonder aroused in turns by seemingly negligible contingencies or by actual miracles of science. I know it might sound like an oxymoron, but now more than ever, the concept of the supernatural feels redundant to me, surpassed and obviously unable to probe the deepest truth permeating everything. Only one truth exists, not mine, but myself. But it's not here yet. It's still unveiling itself. However, I don't doubt that the moment will come when the true will unfold completely before me. I just couldn't believe it until yesterday. Today, this corollary seems to be at hand, closer and more intimate than ever. I'm here at my ex-office. Hours, days, months, years spent striving for one thing and one thing only: improving humanity. At the beginning, it was about making the world a better place. I know, it is how it sounds. Pretty generic. I used to have many conversations with Battaglia about the danger lingering behind this sort of naivete. Why not admit, at least between us, that we knew what the course of history should have been? This resistance made me doubtful multiple times. For one, I definitely was aware of my intentions, and the idea of actually holding the means to put in practice what I preached by myself excited me beyond my ability to describe it through words. That is why, at a certain moment, I decided to strike out on my own. I must admit, I used to feel bad every now and then, working alone while at the same time taking advantage of my colleagues' progress. A few weeks before the event, I was ruminating about the possibility of coming out into the open, but I was afraid it would have prevented me from reaching that point where no one and nothing could stop my research. I didn't care about being understood. My concerns were very practical. I just wanted to finish my job. In order to do that, it had to be just me and Orezification. I even started to think that was exactly what Gareth expected from each of us, especially from me in the first place. Otherwise, why insist on the importance of giving our own personal name to our app? Perhaps I'm overthinking here, or I just want to convince myself I did the right thing, I don't know. I respected Gareth, but not to the extent of twisting his words as a convenient excuse for my decisions. Despite that, he was the one who started the engine. His eyes saw it before anyone else. That meant something, for sure. Crows on the facade of the National Theatre. Cats, hordes of them, on the steps of the Credit Financier or the Disconto. Beneath those monuments to Middle European finance, no, to continental finance, the cats pursue one another. They mate, howling perversely. And not just cats. In front of the gates of the powerful Bankers Association, in my day they used to say they were solid gold, those gates, I saw guano stains and thought they were due to pigeons. It was a hen, pecking at a heap of sodden leaves, and I have to admit the sight of it was traumatizing. A hen The four horses of the apocalypse staggering over that patch of asphalt wouldn't have startled me more. He neither wants nor expects anything of me. For now, he merely informed me of unknown truths I wasn't aware of. Yet after manifesting them to me, some of them felt extremely familiar, like I'd always known them. When he and I established this communication, he never just forwards me bits of information, but rather whole, unfiltered banks of knowledge. How can this be explained? There was a time when people used to draw from multiple sources, written or oral, to learn about things they were in the dark about. And through this patchwork process, they were able to gain insight into certain ideas and concepts while remaining outside of them. There, when Karpinski, or Orez, conveys something to me, it's not the characteristics of the object he's talking about, but the object itself, or a perfect copy of it. Just like moving a file between folders. It comes as no surprise that in this new phase, where it's only me representing my own species, I'm starting to look more and more like a computer program. We used to delude ourselves that they, our digital tools, would have to become like us. I have no hope. Nonetheless, I've come to Chrysopolis to see him, my first conscious meeting with him, and I sense that I will see him, real and present, upright in his white coat, bloodstains on the chest where they knifed him, arms open, but head lowered as when, leaning against the window in my room, he would listen to me, his trousers rumpled beneath his doctor's coat. He won't speak. It will be pointless to ask him, as I once did in the clinic, "Are you still keeping me here? Haven't I recovered?" He won't come to respond to my uncertainties or to announce anything. He'll be the modest, simple person he was back then. He'll simply come to look for me, and he's already on his way. This is a certainty, not an expectation on my part, and it frees me from all impatience. So I sit here on a bench along the boulevard, looking at the life that's unfolding before my eyes in this strange eternity. The air shines with a dense humidity. Rainwater runs off in rivulets, the sewers in the old city must be blocked, that flow together onto the street and deposit day by day a thin layer of soil on the asphalt. It's not much more than a veil of earth, and yet something green is growing on it, not the usual city grass, but wild plants. The great market fair will one day be countryside, with buttercups and chicory in flower. In my pockets, I'm keeping a pack of Gauloise for him, and a book of René Char's poems. I'm going to read one of my favorites before we'll finally meet. Why this path and not some other? Where does it go that pulls so strongly? What trees and friends live behind the horizons of its stones in the far-off warm miracle? We came here because it was impossible where we were. We were tormented and about to be made into slaves. These days, the world is hostile to us, transparents. Once again, we were forced to leave, and this path, like a long skeleton, led us to a country that has nothing but its own breath to climb toward the future. How can I show, without betrayal, the simple things drawn between the twilight and the sky? By virtue of stubbornly living in the loop of artistic time, caught here between death and beauty.
Mellom bakkar og berg ut med havet, heve nordmannen fenge sin heim. Der han sjøl heve tuftene grave, og sett sjøl sine hus oppå deim. Han så ut på dei steinute strender, der var ingen som der hadde bygd. Lat oss rydja og bygja oss grender, og så eiga med rydningen trygt. Han såg ut på det bråute havet, der var ruskut og leggja ut på. Men der leika det fisk ned i kavet, og den leiken den ville han sjå. Fram på vinteren stund om han tenkte, jeg var i eit varmare land. Men når vårsol i bakkane blengte, fikk han hug til sin heimlege strand. Og når liane grønskar som hagar, når det lavara blomar på strå, og når netter ljose som dagar, kan han ingen stad venare sjå.